One is Mr. Ridd again. This is an agenda item which you've all got here. You've read. Some of you went on a site visit and some didn't, on a workshop. We have people here that want to talk, I guess, for and against this today, but I'll hand over to you, Mr. Ridd, to would you like to add anything to it or take this as read, and we'll ask questions.
I'll take it as read. I just want to clarify a couple of things. So, yes, you're correct. There was a workshop. There was a number of councillors attended that site visit. We visited both 5 Mile Bay and Keitha Place in Kinloch. As you recall, there's two main sites that concerns were being raised. In terms of Kinloch Reserve, the consensus at that time was not to support a closure. At 5 Mile Bay, the consensus at the workshop was in support of a partial closure of part of 5 Mile Bay. That is driven primarily from officer level in terms of council's inability to be able to maintain that area because of cars accessing that point, and to the extent there's a track that runs basically along the lakefront there. So the primary driver from an officer level was to be able to maintain the reserve. Now, I gather there's three members of the community have asked and received speaking rights. I'm not sure if you've got a list there.
My list tells me I've got Peter Lemon, Christine Smith, and Lorraine Dale.
Okay, well, Peter's here. I'll hand over to Peter, and I'll.
Okay. In the interest of time, 3 or 4 minutes, please.
Your Worship, Councillors, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm speaking to the motion in regard to the vehicle traffic restriction on 5 Mile Bay Reserve. I am a permanent resident of 5 Mile Bay. I've been a property owner there for about 12 years and live on the backside about halfway down by the wet area. Today I'm speaking as the Chair President of the Incorporated Association of the Property Owners and Friends of 5 Mile Bay, rather than as a resident with my own views, and that's a democratically elected position open to all, where the association is open to all stakeholders. I think you're all very well familiar with 5 Mile Bay, a small community of about 100 properties, of roughly which half of them are on the reserve. To the south of number 76, this area is closed to traffic and has been this way for as long as we can remember, and the rest of the reserve, roughly north of the wetland area halfway down, is open access to vehicles. Generally, we're an amenable community, get on pretty well, but in my position as chair, from all the comments, phone calls, visits to my home, letters, cars on the reserve is the most controversial topic in the area. And I think this is demonstrated in part by the fact that there's lobbying going on now for and against, some to protect the status quo in regard to restricting vehicles. Others are happy to work with what council seems to be leaning towards in terms of some improved controls. While these reasons have merit, I think, against and may particularly apply to a property or a property owner in particular, it's clear to me that when taking all comments into account, the majority view is that there is an underlying and urgent need to address two commonly accepted issues. One is the people pedestrian safety issue, and the other is containment of the damage to the reserve surface, which is felt is largely caused by vehicles. This was borne out again this year at our AGM that was held earlier this year, where a subcommittee was elected that I was also appointed to be chair, to address the matter of vehicle controls on the reserve with the aim of improvement if possible. In parallel with this, you conducted your workshop that was advertised in the press for you as councillors. The subcommittee has therefore written to council requesting details about its intentions to restrict vehicle access for safety and damage control purposes, and to add a general level of support in that something needs to be done, and the association will review your response in due course. There's general applaud to council for what's been done in terms of developing the Tawha Street car park, where most property owners would welcome this enlargement and extension northwards, as it seemed to be a valuable long-term solution, at least to the car park issue. I don't intend to go into the pros and cons of pedestrian safety on the reserve or tell council how to address damage on its own property. All I'd like to say is that the facts that indicate to me as chair is that firstly, increased numbers of vehicles on the reserve are here to stay and are expected to continue. Times have changed significantly over the last 5 years, and that the past justification for cars or vehicles on the reserve may need revision. Pedestrian safety now is paramount, and concerns in the two areas of damage and safety are escalating, particularly across those narrow parts of the reserve which are under more pressure. So I came here today to reinforce Council's proposed intention to restrict vehicle access in whatever way that's applied on the reserve for safety and damage control purposes, and seek clarification on what's being decided. This is because as chair I believe this to be the majority view, and that the best way it is to serve the common good and address a real and urgent problem on the reserve. Before I finish, can I take the liberty of just quickly indicating to councillors both the key reasons that I believe the community that I represent both support restriction, and the key reasons that those who would not support restriction but want more of status quo would believe. I don't wish to explain these for the sake of time. I'd quickly like to list them. Those in support would generally do so because they recognise the vehicle volume of vehicle traffic is continuing with a significant increase, particularly in the last 12 months, something like 100%. Unproven figures, but roughly that figure is what would be recognised. They believe that uncontrolled vehicles and people on the reserve don't mix. Increased damage and high cost of repairs will be addressed. Pedestrian safety is achieved, especially for young children. Speeding vehicles will be contained, if not eliminated, and there's generally an acceptance that considerations will need to be made by all parties concerned. They do not generally accept the way that some key issues are being minimalised by some, where in fact these are important issues, and they're aware also that other reserves around Taupo have had to address similar issues despite some opposition, and these appear to have worked out satisfactorily. Those against restriction generally do so because they're inclined to believe in the reasons such as the reserve is for all. They believe cars on Mahuta Road in front of their properties will either block up Mahuta Road, which is rather narrow at the best of times, or will cause people to walk through their properties to the reserve. They believe that people have the right to drive, is another reason, as close as possible to the lake edge because it's always been done that way. They will not be able to continue, is another reason, to launch their boat from the lake edge, but would rather have to travel to a public boat ramp. I've had quite a few comments to that degree. It's not often put in writing. Others state that if the vehicles are restricted, then some property owners on the front, particularly, will have their own beach. This is referred to as private privileges and is a deeply held view by a few. They also believe it will make some believe, and one person's asked me to emphasise this, that they believe that creating a car parking area outside their property will make it less safe for children by concentrating the vehicles into one area. Others do not agree damages on the reserve is even a material issue worth worrying about. So in conclusion, I believe that to resolve this, and for Council to make a reasoned decision in regard to the reserve, can I suggest that Council needs to go beyond just local views and should consider taking into account knowledge and experience that it's gleaned from other reserves and other experiences around the district, and then apply this experience to our situation at 5 Mile Bay. And in doing so, can I suggest that there's some key community principles or values that we need to follow here. 1, people's overall safety must be paramount. Secondly, precedent knowledge and experience from elsewhere must be applied to rise above and go beyond where we have been before. And thirdly, common sense, not prejudice, must prevail. This way, all property owners and friends of 5 Mile Bay and users of the reserve will be served, and Council will be applauded for addressing what must be done on its own property and serving the common good of all Taupo ratepayers and visitors. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lemon. Christine Smith. Mrs. Christine Smith, is it? Hi.
Your Worship and Councillors, I'm Christine Smith and I have been a ratepayer for nearly 40 years and have had a house at 5 Mile Bay for 36. I'm speaking on behalf of 12 other ratepayers whom I've been able to contact. The rest I just haven't had names and addresses. Unfortunately, there has been a misunderstanding and Peter Lemon's letter, and also his comments today saying that it was that the decision to restrict vehicle access to the beach was unanimous is not correct. So I sort of, in a way, I'm a little incensed that he said he's the chairman and speaking for the majority. Anyway, that be the point. We are asking for the status quo. We have had one of the driest summers, and the surface of the reserve has been cut up, particularly at the southern end. But I believe there are other remedies out there. I don't know them all. Obviously, John would. I don't know. Maybe it can be soiled and regrassed, and it will naturally grow back. A static car park, and by this I'm not sure, John, whether you mean putting bollards up with a car width out from the piece of tar seal that's there. Well, they won't be able to turn around. It's going to have to be a lot bigger, because you're not going to be able to back a car out of a static car park, turn around, and go down the road again. It's physically not wide enough. So therefore, you're going to have to put more tar seal down. If you don't, you're going to end up with a sand pit right round the tar sealed area, because you can't concentrate that many cars in a small area and have the surface maintained. The next point, I mean, John's basically said what we're going to say, so Peter has at least. To park both cars on side of Mahutu Road is going to make it a one-way road. It's impossible not to do that. It's too narrow, as he said. The safety of children, he's already mentioned that. It has never been a problem. My children have run across there, as have my grandchildren and heaps of other people's. The people that come to 5 Mile Bay are basically locals, and we have heaps of them. They've been coming for years. They are very considerate, and they certainly look out for children. I think rabbits are more of a problem at 5 Mile Bay, to be perfectly honest with you, eating the grass. As an alternative, and as Peter suggested, we do support the extension of the Taupo car park that's there already, and would like to see that extended as an alternative. On the 23rd of October 2004, the council held a public meeting at 5 Mile Bay. 70 property owners were there and members of the public. I was there. Yep, so was I. I'm sure not 70 people knew about this proposal coming to council today. The people I rang had no idea. So I therefore feel that if you wish to carry on with this proposal, you should surely consult the wider community, which is the Taupo people themselves, who come and use our beach. Even today I was at the Taupo AC Baths, and 2 people, I said I was going to come, and they said, what? I said, closing, restricting access. And they said, oh, no, we go all the time to 5 Mile Bay. They were people I didn't know. Anyway, hopefully we have presented a balanced view, and that you will appreciate our wishes to preserve the status quo.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope you don't mind me calling you Christine. Thank you very much for that. I think all councillors do realise that reserves belong to everybody in this district, not necessarily people that border them or boundary them. They belong to each and every one of us, including I've taken my grandkids down there for a picnic. So thank you very much. And Ms. Dale, Lorraine, I hope you don't mind me calling you Lorraine. Known you long enough.
Call me Lorraine.
Okay, cool.
Merrick, councillors, thank you for giving me your time. I'm going to make mine brief. It will be 4 minutes because I'm a busy person. I've got taxpayer dollars to protect. And I'm not going to reiterate what Peter and Chris have said because they're basically the pros and cons. I have spoken to the majority of people who are involved and have houses along this area that you intend to lock off with bollards. They are in complete opposition for obvious reasons. They don't want their homes to be a car park placed in front. They've all pointed out to me the value of their properties will drop, which I think is a realistic solution for them to come to. They are horrified and intend to inform their own group if this goes ahead because they have been through it in 2007. I don't think they expect to go through it again. The simple fact of the matter is, for me, you either block it off and leave everybody in the same position or status quo. You can't just block off an area and make 13 people responsible for that problem. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine. So, So, Councillor Kipper.
I just got some questions on, firstly, what is the cost of putting in bollards against the existing cost of maintenance of that reserve?
We could come to that in a minute if we really need to, but do you know that just roughly off the top of your head? It's not really the issue here today. I think we need to focus on what the issue is here today. It would appear to me that we have a divided community in 5 Mile Bay about whether it gets closed to public traffic or not closed to public traffic. But I think if I've heard something today that's pertinent, I think it's a wider public issue than just people that live at 5 Mile Bay. It's all our reserve, including myself. And it makes me wonder, and we can debate this here for a short while, but it makes me wonder if we shouldn't be, I think, setting up some more public consultation or perhaps another more formal or informal public workshop regards this matter. We're going into winter now, so it's not really a paramount decision has to be made today, in my opinion, because there's not thousands of people down there picnicking tonight because daylight saving and everything else is finished. So let's use some common sense. We do have to look at maybe next summer is where we need to look at, and I think there needs to be more input from a wider spectrum of people. But it's not for me to mouth off here all day. Councillor Downer, then Councillor Hickman.
Yeah, I mean, I blame myself. I didn't make that workshop about a month ago or a week ago, but I was involved in 2007 and 2008 through a huge reserve management review on all our reserves, and 5 Mile Bay was one of them. And the thing that concerned me also back then, as well as now, is Christine, if she doesn't mind me calling her Christine, said that we have had probably one of our longest, hottest, driest summers, and naturally a lot of our reserves are pretty well damaged. I know it gets worse with vehicles going over there. And the period of that time where there is a lot of vehicles is just the 2-week period from Boxing Day through to past New Year's Eve, predominantly the biggest holiday time. So I would endorse Mayor Rick that we do a little bit more consultation and consult the wider community on this. That's my feeling on it. I voted against it last time, and at the moment I still feel that way. But I'd like to actually delve into it a little bit more, and actually even with all the rain, I'd like to go down and visit it now and see how the growth and see whether it's returned to a certain bit.
Okay, I've got a few hands up. I'm sorry, I have to take them in order. It's Councillor Hickling next, then there, and there.
I was just going to say my real concern is that if we probably don't do anything at the moment, I can see it being more or less the same for next year too. This is an ideal time to at least try and attempt to get some remedial work done, and at least make an attempt to have the reserve looking something as it should look, all knowing all well that it is on sand. It's not easy to establish a grass cover on that area, but in all honesty, from what we've seen on the site visit, we can't really allow our reserves to get damaged so much. Yet I feel exactly the same. We don't want to totally close it off to cars. So going out for some, I think we've got to think how we can perhaps manage that a little bit differently. We might construct a nice walk path down through there which would give us some definition, and then perhaps have a grass which would help it to, I don't know, become more established.
Would it be fair to say, Councillor Hickling, at this very stage, we do need to do some remedial work down there?
Most
so
definitely.
If that's not an issue, we should be doing that.
Yeah.
Remedial
and it
work.
might mean that we've got to close it off temporarily.
This is a separate issue
while the grass
altogether.
gets
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you've got that message, and I need to go there, then there, I think. Councillor Henderson?
I was just going to say I don't favour deferring this decision, because I look at it and I think, have we got the facts before us? I think we have. I think, has the community been canvassed? To my mind, they have, going back to 2007. There's a wide range of views expressed. I think council should just get on and make a decision one way or the other.
Councillor Johnson?
Just for clarification, when Whaiawaka was bollarded off,
Did that go out to consultation?
Yeah, we had a
Yeah,
big.
to the
That was
reserve management plan.
part of the 2008 and
Yeah,
7
it was big.
reviews.
Councillor Kirk.
I've sort of am under a different impression now than I was during the visit to the site, and I just I think we do have a bit more time on our side, and I sincerely think I've actually had more people against this recommendation than I've heard from people about the bus stop. So I seriously think we need to go out for wider consultation.
I'm going to apologise to the gentleman at the back of the room. I'm coming to you. It's Mr. Savills down there. I did give him speaking right, and then I've inadvertently just cut you off, sir. So I'll finish with the 2 questions over here, and then you can come forward. And please accept my apologies. Councillor Williams and Councillor Kip.
Your Worship, I'd just like to put a question up to all councillors, and that is, do we think it's desirable for our public reserves to be used for a plethora of cars speeding along reserves, running their dogs? And secondly, do you think it's acceptable for a large group of children or families playing cricket to have cars moving through the middle of them? Personally, I think it's absolutely so dangerous, and this issue hasn't come up just this summer. It was last summer as well when I think Mr. Rid, you had approaches the previous summer as well. Unlike Councillor Kirk, I must mix some different circles because I attended a barbecue. I think it was New Year's Eve down at 5 Mile Bay where there was 40 people there, all local 5 Mile Bay people, absolutely furious about the situation with vehicles on the reserve and some of the loutish behaviour, and all year round, I think, with the dog runners. So I would think that I concur with Councillor Henderson. I think we need to make a decision and make it quickly, because this is a dog running issue, especially the cars through the reserve. It's happening year round, not just in the summer.
I'm picking that this is a reserve that comes within the meaning of the Reserves Act 1977, which has vehicle restrictions on reserves. But the other question I have, does it cover or does it have a reserve management plan of its own?
No, it's part of a wider reserve management plan.
We said it in the last triennium, you remember that. Every reserve, we did the whole lot. Hang on, Councillor Williams. I need to ask Mr. Saville. Has that answered your question, Councillor Kipper? Yeah. TKMP did it, remember? Mr. Saville, again, I apologise to you. If you'd like to come forward for 3 or 4 minutes, I did give you speaking right and then cut you out to dry. My apologies.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, 5 Mile Bay Reserve is a gem. We've had a holiday house there for 8 years, and we're lucky enough to have it on the waterfront. And we see the vehicles coming and going all the time. They mostly go directly to the beachfront because it's one of the few places in Taupo you can. In fact, I came up from Christchurch this morning on an airplane and sat beside a woman whose elderly mother lives in a retirement home, and her favourite thing is to be taken down to the 5 Mile Bay to park on the waterfront.
In her car?
In her car. I don't think she's capable of getting out of the car. But to answer just one of the comments on the councillor on your right, he said it came up in 2008, and a lot of time was spent, and we came to a hearing here, and was the proposal to enclose cars in the Corral car park was emphatically rejected, as it was in 2004. I wonder, have you had the benefit of all the information from the reserve management plan from 2008, which was rejected? But a lot of the people, we're new. We've only been there 8 years, but a lot of people have been there for a lot longer, and they say that this comes up as an attempt by a small group of residents to privatise an area in favour of corralling the cars in one place. And I think if a car park was built, it would be initially small, accommodating, say, 20 cars. Well, after the cars would come in, couldn't find a park, head out onto Mahuta Road. We've got 6 grandchildren. The car park proposed that's been suggested would be right in front of where we live, and it would mean our family would be going across cars coming in and out corralled. Well, now they go directly. We welcome the cars, and one thing that we know for certain, that most of the people who come to Whai Bay are Taupo people. The reserve belongs to them. It's pretty special, and a report from Reach Morrison, which I haven't got with me, he said that it would devalue the properties where any power park was built by up to $150,000. So we're strongly opposed to it, and we welcome the cars. As far as safety is concerned, our children go down to the south end. They know a family down there, and they play there, and they go across to the beach, mostly supervised when they're small. Most visitors to 5 Mile Bay are sensible people, and I think that they should be welcomed there. There is damage, and I think I sent a letter that was distributed to all the councillors recommending that it's repairable, and that they could extend the car park to the north end up towards the ski lane. And I just hope that I'm glad that you've got a consultative process, because it seems that a number of property owners have only found out that this proposal was by sort of the odd email or over the back fence. So I hope that a really good consultative process takes place. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Saville. Well, once again, I do propose to you, fellow councillors, in the interest of time and of making the correct decision, that A, council staff, I don't think they need telling twice, look at doing remedial work down there at the moment, because it is necessary. It's been a long, hot, dry summer, etc., etc. But we need to go out further with this, consult further, workshop it more further. Councillor Heckling, Councillor Downer, and myself were involved in this process in the last triennium. It was laborious. I think one meeting someone here mentioned today, we had 70 or 80 people at that meeting at 5 Mile Bay. They didn't want it closed. Sort of hearing both sides now. We spent a lot of time on that, so I just respectfully ask the others that before they make that decision, they're going to have to come on that journey that we went on. Is that fair, Councillor Heckling?
Yeah, most definitely, Your Worship. Yeah.
So would I have a consensus to defer this agenda item until this has been workshopped and further consultation done in the greater public? Councillor Henderson?
I was just curious, as you've outlined that you've done significant consultation before, at significant time and cost, no doubt, to all concerned. What more could possibly be learned by essentially repeating that consultation now, or what would we do now differently or new that would get us better?
I guess it would just help you as new councillors.
Sorry, I'm just carrying on. That would get us better information, or information that we don't already have available to us about this.
I think you'll get the general public feedback that we did at the time, that they do not want it closed off. I realise there's a ground getting damaged down there and things, but the consensus we weighed up did not want this closed down. Councillor Downer?
Yeah, and I'm open. My decision back then was no, and my decision now would be no, unless we have more consultation. And then, I want to be open and transparent that after 6 years, as Peter said, that it might have changed down there. I didn't go down to the workshop down there, but I want to be completely, because I know this is a huge thing, even for me. I used to take my family down there when they were young, because it was an accessible place that you could park your car and the babies. Now I go to Whare Waka because the kids are obviously older, but I know a lot of other families that go down there because the baby can stay in the car and they can still it. So one of the few places that you can access. So I want to go through all the pros and cons again. I think this is too important just to make a decision here today.
Michael, when you get to my age, then you'll have grandchildren, you'll be going back to 5 Mile Bay like I am now. The cycle of life.
Got an 18-year-old, I don't want to wish that on quickly, thank you.
If I was pushed into corner today, I'll be quite honest about it. What I know about it, I'd vote against. However, I'll put it to you again. I'm happy to go through a more in-depth process, whatever process that might need to be. And I ask you to defer this agenda item until that process, whatever that process is, has been adhered to and followed and done. Councillor Hickling.
I would support that, but I really do think that we need, as a council today, to make the decision to start remedial work on that reserve. It's most important.
I'll say this in public on webcam. You know I've done a lot of work with the prisons lately. The Tongariro prison is now a working prison. I have the ability to speak to the, whatever he's called down there that runs the prison. They have labour just busting, wanting to come out. So if there's remedial work down there that takes physical labour, I can get it done for free for you, sir.
As long as cars continue to access the reserve,
you'd have to temporarily close.
You might have to temporarily close your window. I'm not wanting to go for a barbecue there tonight.
Yeah.
Funnily enough.
But we need to make that decision, Your Worship, today to perhaps temporarily close the reserve while the remedial work gets
Does the whole reserve need to be closed because of that little old lady? Just give me a minute. That comes out and sits there when her daughter takes her retirement home, or is it just areas we need to ring off and fix up?
Well,
I'll just ask. I'll come to you. Is it just areas, or do we need to temporarily close that while we get this work done?
In order to be able to properly do remedial works, we need to close the whole of that reserve off.
How long?
12 months.
But you can leave.
I can't support that.
Where's the plan? You can leave the access road open and through to the rocks either side, though, John, can't you?
Yep. As long as we can close off. Sorry.
And close it from here, sort of thing, through to the south. You know where the cul-de-sac is, like the little turning point. You could close it off there, through to the south, so that you can do that long, narrow stretch, and then just up on the top, further through there, where the end of the tar seal finishes, just to get those two stretches repaired. Surely.
Okay. Yeah. And I take on board what Councillor Hickling's saying. I believe it's easy enough to do, and particularly pick up those rocks and replace them around the wounded areas. But hang on, Councillor Henderson. Yeah.
I was just going to question the logic of spending ratepayer money, because you won't get this done for nothing on a reserve that you may be able to close temporarily or may not, but then you may well open up again for more damage to occur on what you've just spent ratepayer money fixing. That, to me, defeats any logic I can possibly imagine.
It'll give us time to consult a little bit further on the issues that's proposed.
The reason I asked the question about Whai was I was most incensed when council blocked it off with bollards, because my right of probably 45 years of driving down there and with my mother to have picnics on the beach was taken away from me. However, my views changed once I saw how the reserve was in a better state through parking and walking the 10 metres that I had to do. I also have been going to 5 Mile for a long period, and the damage is getting worse each year. So the greater good for the long term, it needs to have the cars off the reserve in my eyes. And I take that's an experience I've seen at Whai. Whai is a very pleasant reserve now, and all you do is walk across the road and park. And again, there's space in the pre-existing carriageway for room for cars to park and turn and still access 50 metres either way. There's scope further down in front of the swamp to extend car parking. That would not affect any houses in front, because there's no one living in the swamp, to give more space. So, I believe that in the big picture, especially with the work Bike Taupo's doing with possibly extending the Lions Walk down to Waitanui, that there would be a defined path there, but the cars cause a lot of damage. So I believe we've got to make a decision for the longer preservation of the reserve. So I think we need to get on, and I'm in agreement of closing it off, maybe with some modification to make it slightly easier for vehicles to park and move around.
So would you be happy if that car park was put in front of your house?
It's already there. It is we've just allowed, cars are not supposed to drive on the reserves in most places, yet they have an ability here as per the Reserves Act. There's a predefined tarmac that is for parking, but we put no controls to stop cars moving onto the lawns.
Councillor did you? Oh, sorry.
Again, there's, too many variables up in the air, like the cost of what it's going to cost to, look at it. Surely there must be in the budget of our reserves on how much we spend on maintenance and stuff like that. Does it get swapped to another reserve when one reserve doesn't need too much maintenance, but another reserve is damaged. I look at the home show out on the Tongariro reserve, and the ground got chomped up on that. That then now needs, extra money on it to get done. Those are the variables that I need, and I'd again need a workshop. If the workshop's next week, I'll make sure I'm there. And then we can address, as Councillor Hickling said, that it does need addressing, but underneath our own operations, there must be a management plan that they must go through when certain reserves need more maintenance than others. So those are the things that I'd want to find out, rather than just say, right, we're closing it off to maintain it for a year. Councillor Craig?
Have I got this right? Is this the only reserve that we've got in the whole district where you can drive right up to the beach?
No, Keitha Place and Kinloch is the other one, but
but there's none up here at the northern end of the lake. It's
Yeah,
the only
there's
one.
none up here. So what's going to happen? I've add this. If it's the only one, and there's this population of holidaymakers and residents of Taupo, it's the only one. Surely the number of people is going to increase over the years, as Mr. Lemon said, and that's got a bit of a worry if this is happening like Barry said it's happened the year before and the year before. And the other thing I'd like to say is we've got two experts here, Alison and John, that know how long it's going to take to recover this reserve back to what it was like 5 or 6 years ago. Are we going to go against their advice? And I'd like to just say that they know what they're talking about. And if John says 12 months till it restores itself to a grass, I think we've got to abide by these experts' opinions.
Can I just,
Why do we have a governance team?
Can I just reply to Councillor Crate? Yeah. This, as Mr. Saville said, this went through, and there's that management plan that you can read. It was really damaged back then too. They had quite severe storms that year, which ate away erosion, that ate away at the beach, and the residents came up with a plan with council to regenerate or remediate or whatever it is, and it did work. It came right for the next 2 years, and so there's always going to be times of and I appreciate that last year might have been another year that it got damaged, but those are the things that I want to find out from the last 6 years. Just is the traffic count is a lot more? Is it only over those 2 week periods? I mean, how many vehicles go on there, say from now until the next holiday big period is Labour weekend?
Councillor Williams?
Yes, I would like to congratulate Councillor Johnson on his eloquently presented argument, which I totally concur with. And I'd also like to ask fellow councillors how we could possibly condone traffic mixed up with children, pet dogs, grandmothers and grandfathers, swimmers, and people aren't really enjoying what a truly a reserve is meant to be a place of recreation and leisure. How could we possibly support having vehicles with all their stench and exhaust and speed and danger amongst that particular group, but also aren't we meant to be a cycle-friendly district? And we're developing the cycleway all the way along to Waitanui, and it's getting more and more use, and walkway. How could we possibly rationalise putting vehicles amongst an area of beauty? It just does not fit in my view.
I've only been here 42 years and it fits well for me, but however, that's just me. And I've spent a lot of time down there with picnics and babies in cars, etc., and old people in cars and that, but that's just me. So it would appear to me if it would be a push comes to a shove, it's going to be a pretty tight vote in here today. And as right as the chair, and I'm going to do it because I've been reminded that I am deferring this agenda item for a more open, honest and transparent, robust workshop and or public consultation input to the decision-making process. So thank you very much for that.
Can you just outline what you want us to do in that regard? Do you want a workshop or do you want us to...
I think we need to have a... how many houses on this thing here? 100, is it? Okay, so I think it requires a notification letter, yes, no, simple process to those houses, and I think it needs to be openly workshopped and advertised that way for an open workshop in the chamber here. Councillor Downer?
I'd like to endorse what Councillor Hickling has said, though, Mayor Rick, is that also we get a costing or the management plan. How much you're going to shift there? What's your plan to remedial,
mate.
Whatever, yep, to do it, and what's your time frame and stuff like that, and give us a few costings. Can you shift your budget somewhere from another reserve that doesn't need it to this reserve, and what's the time process to get something done there?
Okay, is that clear? Okay, thank you very much. We'll now break for 10 minutes, please, team. Can we reconvene at 3 o'clock and move on with the agenda? Thank you.